All right, so for number 1 on our study guide, we got the r squared is equal to 96. So if we take the square root of both sides, we need to break 96 down into 2 square roots. And you can do 96 divided by 16. So this is like saying 16 times 6 with the square roots. And the square root of 16 is a positive or a negative 4. And then you have the root 6 on the end. So number 1 is positive negative 4, root 6. Okay, number 2, there is no number that will multiply to get 7. The only things you have is 1 and 7. So when you take the square root of both sides, the square root of 1 is just positive and negative 1 and root 7. So that is what we get for number 2. Same thing for number 3. This would be positive and negative square root of 29. Because the only things that multiply to give you 29 would be the square root of 1 and the square root of 29. All right, when we look at 78, so what numbers will multiply to give me 78? All right, if I try, I'm just going to start trying different numbers. So I'm trying 78 divided by 4. Okay, that's 19 and a half. I've got 78 divided by 16 maybe. No, that's not going to work. We've got 78 divided by 36. Also not going to work. Okay, it looks like we may not be able to find one. 78 divided by 49, I get 1.59183. So sometimes you're not able to find one. And in that case, again, this is the square root of 1 times the square root of 78. Okay, so we may not be able to find one. If it had been 72, you could break that down to 9 times 8. But this one, again, it's just going to be positive, negative, the square root of 78. Okay, let's look at, then we skipped from number 4 to number 9. So this says I believe it was m squared plus 7 is equal to 6. So the first step we got to do is subtract 7 from both sides. So we get m squared equals negative 1. So now when we take the square root of both sides, we get m on the left-hand side, and the square root of negative 1 is I, the imaginary number I. Okay, so that would be your answer. It's actually positive and negative I. Okay, number 10. All right, x squared minus 1 equals 80. Because this is a minus 1 on the left-hand side, we're going to add 1 to both sides, and we get x squared is equal to 81. When we take the square root of both sides here, x is equal to positive and negative 9. Okay, let's scroll on up to number 11. All right, so 4x minus 6 equals 74. So we need to add 6 to both sides. And so that's going to give me, what is that, 80 over here? All right, 74 plus 6 is 80. All right, and then we need to divide by 4, right? So I've got 80 divided by 4. And we're going to get x squared is equal to 80 divided by 4 is 20. Okay, so now we have to split 20 up into something that we can take the square root of. Well, 20 can get split up into the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. Okay, so we have the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. We know what the square root of 4 is. The square root of 4 is positive and negative 2. And then we have the root 5 on the end. Okay, so we got number 12. So we got to subtract 7 from both sides. So when I subtract 7, that's going to give me 300 over here. divide by 3 on both sides. Divide by 3, divide by 3. We get m squared equals 100. Okay, so m squared equals 100. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 100 is a nice number. It is positive and negative 10. So this is going to be m is equal to positive and negative 10. Okay? 15. All right, we have p minus 4 squared. So if this was just an x squared right here, we could take the square root of both sides and just get x by itself. All right, so when we take the square root of p minus 4 squared, we're just going to get p minus 4. And then the square root of 16 is positive and negative 4. So that's what we've got here. We've got p minus 4 is equal to positive and negative 4. So this turns into two cases. You have p minus 4 equals positive 4, and you have p minus 4 equals negative 4. So what you got to do is you got to add 4 to both sides for each of these. So when you add 4, this will give you p is equal to 8. And when you add 4 here, p is equal to 0. So that would be your two solutions for this. Like we get a positive and negative 10, that's your two solutions. Down here, you get a positive 8 and a 0. Okay, 16. Same idea here. We take the square root of both sides. Okay, the square root of 9 is a positive negative 3. The square root of 2k minus 1 squared is just 2k minus 1. Okay, so we have our two cases here. You have 2k minus 1 is equal to positive 3. And we have over here 2k minus 1 is equal to negative 3. So we have to solve each of these cases. All right, we add 1 to both sides. Add 1, add 1. You get 2k is equal to 4. Well, divide by 2. And you get k is equal to 2. On this side, well, add 1 over here, add 1. You get 2k is equal to negative 2. And when you divide by 2, you get k is equal to negative 1 for that one. Okay, let's look at 17. Same idea, same process, except now we have an extra plus 4 on the end. So we're going to need to get rid of that first by subtracting 4 from both sides. Okay, that's going to get your minus 4 to cancel, and that's going to leave us with 24 on this side. So let's go ahead and do that. 6x plus 2 squared is equal to 24 when we subtract 4 from both sides. All right, and then we've got to take the square roots. So we need to square root this and square root this. Okay, the problem with taking the square root of 24 is we don't necessarily get a nice number like we did with 9 and like we did with 16. Okay, if it was the square root of 25, then it would be a nice number. It would be positive or negative 5. But 24 is not. So we're going to have to split 24 up into different pieces. So the square root of 24 can be written as the square root of 4 times the square root of 6, because 4 times 6 is 24. I think we would all agree with that. And we know the square root of 4 is positive and negative 2. So we get 6x plus 2 is equal to positive and negative 2 square root of 6. Okay, and when we have these, the answer is going to look pretty complicated, but it's really not that bad. To solve this and to finish solving this problem out, you would have to subtract 2 from both sides. So we just put that on the end. Okay, on the outside of this radical. So you got positive negative 2 root 6 and then minus 2 on the end. And then our last step would be to get x by itself, you would have to divide by 6, right? We would always take whatever number this is and divide it all by 6. And so we're just going to write that whole thing out. And that's how it would be written most of the time on a multiple choice test. Okay? You have positive negative 2 root 6 minus 2 over 6. We could actually simplify this one step further. Do we notice that 2, 2, and 6 can all be divided by 2? Right? They all can be divided by 2. So we could simplify this down. That would be like a positive and negative 1 root 6 minus 1 all over 3. So that would be in its simplest form right there. Positive, negative, root 6. You don't have to write the 1 in front of the root 6. Minus 1 over 3. If we divided all those by 2. Okay, last one right here. 18. So we have 18. This is 10 in front of our parentheses. X minus 7 squared is equal to 440. So to undo multiplying this by 10, so instead of distributing, all right, to undo that multiplying by 10, we're going to divide both sides by 10. So let's divide by 10, divide by 10. We get x minus 7 squared is equal to 44. Okay? And now we're ready to take the square root of both sides. Square root of both sides. Okay, the problem with 44 is it's not a nice square root for us. 49 would be a nice square root. 36 would be a nice square root. But 44 is somewhere in the middle. So we need to try to break this up into pieces that are nice. I know that 4 will go into 44, and that's one of our nice square roots. So that's going to be square root of 4 times the square root of 11, right? And we know what the square root of 4 is, don't we? Positive and negative 2. So we get x minus 7 is equal to positive and negative 2 root 11. And our last step here, since this is x minus 7 on the left side, we would just add 7 to both sides. So your final answer for x is positive and negative 2 root 11